Lately, I've been asked to reflect on the most memorable events of my presidency. Well, among those is a phone call I received several months ago from President Uribe. He called to say that a group of hostages, including 3 Americans, who had been held in captivity for 5 years, had been rescued and were alive and safe and sound. It was a joyful moment, Mr. President, and it was a credit to your leadership. For President Uribe, the great demands of office continue. Today, the United States honors all Colombians by honoring the man they have chosen to lead them, by refusing to allow the land he loves to be destroyed by an enemy within, by proving that terror can be opposed and defeated. President Uribe has reawakened the hopes of his countrymen and shown a model of leadership to a watching world. Colombia remains a nation with challenges, but the future will always be bright in a country that produces such men as President Alvaro Uribe. Congratulations, mi amigo.
So there you have President Bush in the White House about to give the Medals of Freedom to the 3 leaders, 2 former prime ministers, Blair and Howard immediately on the left, and Alvaro Uribe, the president of Colombia.
And each has amassed distinctions and achievements that belong to him alone. Yet all of them have shown a firm adherence to the principles of freedom and democratic values, and a willingness to face problems squarely instead of passing them on to others. They're the sort of guys who look you in the eye and tell you the truth and keep their word. In lengthy service, they proved to be leaders of character and fortitude. They are warm friends of the United States of America. The opportunity to know them and work with them has been among the great satisfactions of my time as president. I respect them and I admire them. And now I ask the military aide to read the citations, and it will be my honor to present the Presidential Medal of Freedom to Tony Blair, John Howard, Alvaro Uribe.
Tony Blair. Tony Blair has been a powerful force of freedom and for building understanding among nations. As Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, he was instrumental in helping millions of people secure their freedom in Afghanistan, Iraq, Kosovo, and Sierra Leone, forging a new era of peace in Northern Ireland, providing humanitarian assistance around the globe, especially in Africa, and strengthening the relationship between our 2 nations. Throughout his career and in his role as Quartet representative to the Middle East, he has worked to provide people with opportunities to better their lives. The United States honors Tony Blair for his lifelong dedication to building a more just and peaceful world.
So the medal to Tony Blair at a time when he's under some criticism as the representative of the Quartet in the Middle East for really not being as engaged as he should have been, in the view of some critics, before the Israeli operation into Gaza, particularly not having delivered any kind of report to the Security Council, according to those inside the United Nations in New York. And certainly there will be those who will not be comfortable about these images, but this is the president who this time next week will no longer be president, President Bush. This time next week, already, it'll be Barack Obama from midday on January the 20th. John Howard, the former Australian Prime Minister.
4 decades, John Howard has been an unwavering champion of democracy and freedom. As Prime Minister of Australia, he helped deliver unparalleled prosperity to his country's people through staunch adherence to free market principles. Relations between the 2 countries were never closer than under his stewardship and after the attacks of September 11, 2001. He worked steadfastly to combat the scourge of terrorism, bring freedom to millions of people, promote democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. The United States honors John Winston Howard for his lifelong efforts to spread hope and freedom throughout the world.
But there is a contrast between former Prime Minister John Howard and former Prime Minister Tony Blair. Tony Blair did get re-elected for a third term, although he then left government after the Iraq War, whereas John Howard in the election 16 months ago in Australia and his Liberal Party were elected out of power to be replaced by the centre-left government of Kevin Rudd, as much as because, as he himself admits, they'd become tired of him and his form of government.
Uribe Vélez. As President of Colombia, Álvaro Uribe has championed the rule of law in a country that endured decades of violence at the hands of illegal armed groups. He has demonstrated a deep commitment to the prosperity of Colombia's people, and his bold policies have spread democratic values and established the foundation for lasting peace throughout Colombia. He has been a courageous partner of the United States, and under his leadership, Colombia has become a model for countries seeking reconciliation and the establishment of a society based on respect for human dignity. The United States honors Álvaro Uribe Vélez for his commitment to freedom, democracy, and the rule of law.
So President Uribe gets his medal, as much for Plan Colombia, the big struggle against the drugs cartels, and also because of the way, through very, very tough, robust policies, he's diminished the power of the FARC, the left-wing guerrillas who at one point did have control of part of Colombia as part of a deal which he then unpicked. And the result is that several of the main FARC leaders were either killed in major operations by the Colombian security forces or, in the case of a couple of leaders, have now died. But the FARC is much diminished as a terrorism force in Colombia.
In the State Dining Room. Please enjoy yourselves, and thank you for joining us here at the White House.
So the Presidential Medal of Freedom to those three former and current leaders. At this time, it must be remembered, about 4 kilometers away up Pennsylvania Avenue, up on Capitol Hill. Already you're seeing the beginning of the Barack Obama administration with Hillary Clinton, the former First Lady, Senator Hillary Clinton, and of course the former candidate against Barack Obama is up on Capitol Hill at a hearing, her confirmation hearing to become Secretary of State in the government of President Barack Obama, who this time next week will have taken the seals of office and been sworn in up on Capitol Hill in a very public ceremony. There, Colin Powell, former Secretary of State of President Bush, here on BBC World News.
Welcome back. As President Bush counts the days and indeed the hours before he leaves office, he hosted a gathering of like-minded leaders at the White House today. The Presidential Medal of Freedom, America's most prestigious civilian tribute, was given to Colombian President Álvaro Uribe, former Australian Prime Minister John Howard, and former British Prime Minister Tony Blair. Call them the axis of friendship. The BBC's Richard Lister reports on Blair's honour, which may have come with a rather steep political cost.
We have assembled quite a distinguished crowd to honor three good friends.
This may have been a bittersweet moment for Tony Blair, America's highest civil honour from the president who helped bring about his downfall. Mr. Blair's support for the Iraq War was politically disastrous at home, but rewarded in Washington today.
Tony Blair's entire career is defined by his devotion to democratic values and human dignity. At his very center, this man believes in freedom, freedom from oppression, freedom from hunger, freedom from disease, and freedom from fear and despair.
So strong was his alliance with the president that he was derided as Bush's poodle by his British critics, but he remains extremely popular in America, one of only a few foreign leaders to address the US Congress.
Through the troubled times since September the 11th changed our world, we have been allies and friends. Thank you, Mr. President, for your leadership.
Curiously, he has yet to pick up the Congressional Gold Medal awarded to him 8 years ago. His staff speak of logistical problems. A former British ambassador to Washington suggests it simply looked bad to get a medal for an unpopular war. Having Mr. Blair on side as an eloquent spokesman for the war in Iraq may have brought Mr. Bush political and diplomatic benefits. But if there were any advantages for Mr. Blair in this relationship, it's unclear what they were. Tony Blair has avoided the limelight in recent years. In the midst of his delicate diplomacy in the Middle East, this may not have been the best time to be endorsed by George Bush, but it's unlikely the president would have left office without honouring his most loyal friend. Richard Lister, BBC News, Washington.